Hello there everybody, this is Krista and welcome back to Crocheter's Tarot and my very messy room behind me and my pajamas. Today is the 4th of July when I'm filming this, so I've had the whole day off of work. So why leave my pajamas and why change that just to make a video? So today, as you could tell from the title, what I wanted to talk about is inner child work and sort of the revelations and thoughts I've been having around that for myself. Now, what got me thinking on this? Question mark. You know, I had this in my brain before I pressed record. What got me thinking about this? I can't quite remember the exact instance. Yes, I can. So, as I feel like I've mentioned many times before, but if you're new here, I'll say it again. My day job is working as a children's librarian. And not to toot my own horn, but it is something I'm very good at, and it's something that really came very naturally to me. And it's kind of brought this feeling of just, I feel lucky that I have found something that I really enjoy, except that I quickly found that. This is my first, I've been doing this for a few years now, but it was my first full-time job ever, and it instantly worked out. And I feel very lucky for that. And through that, I have gotten to know so many of the kids, so many of the parents, and one of the parents that I know pretty well made a comment to me, maybe 2 weeks ago now. I was sitting on the floor playing with their child. We were playing with plastic dinosaurs, which I love, so fun, and the parent of that child just kind of said to me, like, "You're so good at playing in that way, like that's not something that I understand how to do, like it just doesn't come naturally to me. I really try, of course, because I want to play with my child, but just kind of saying like I'm basically they were envious of me that it just seemed to come so naturally, and I was so confused in that moment for a response, because I was like, what do you mean? I thought everybody just like did this all the time, because to me I think they were looking at it as, this is my job, this is something that like I learned how to do, and like since I do it every day with many different children, like it's just sort of a thing I learned how to do. But it was really genuinely confusing to me in the moment, because that's not the case. I was not trained to play a certain way, it just that is how I've always been. And then I realized the connection when, of course, we were researching more about neurodivergence, as I tend to do quite often, and I learned that childlikeness is a common trait of many different types of neurodivergence, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what was going on. Is the other individual, I can't make any assumptions, but I assume maybe they are more neurotypical. I am neurodivergent. It didn't occur to me that not everybody thinks and does things this way. And so it really got me thinking about the whole concept of inner child work, because I think I've even said in a few videos that I don't do inner child work, it doesn't work for me. And it just, that instance spurred this whole thing of like, oh my gosh, I have been going about it all wrong for my neurodivergent brain, because at least my conception, of course, inner child work, the goal behind it is healing really kind of trauma that occurred in childhood, but the way I have read and heard it described, and it seems like the way a lot of people go about it, is connecting to an inner child that feels lost to them, or feels like it has just been so in the background for so long, and sort of doing certain activities to help them reconnect with like an inner child version of themselves. And that's what hasn't made sense to me and hasn't worked for me, because I've now realized that my sense of inner child isn't something that has been hidden away or something I need to like work hard to connect with or do special activities to connect with. The realization is that that is my natural plane of existence, is almost living as inner child in a way. I don't know if I'm making any sense, like, but all in all to say that I have a childlike personality. That is no surprise to anybody. I've talked about it. I knew that about myself, but it goes beyond that, where in my day-to-day I like childlike things. I interact with childlike things outside of work that I think because of my job, I think I have kind of gotten myself to believe that the reason I do that or interact with certain things outside of work is so that I can do my job better. Not true. It's just because I like it. And so it really, really got me thinking about inner child work and made me see, like, no, this is something that I engage with. It's just in a different way. And I could be totally talking out my butt right now, because maybe I'm just taking what else I have read and seen wrong, and everyone's watching this being like, yeah, that's what we're all doing. Oh my gosh, Krista, relax. But it felt like a revelation to me, so I just kind of wanted to share it, and it might not be making any sorts of sense, but that's okay. So, let's get my thoughts in a little bit of an order. What was my point to all this? My point is that the work I feel I need to do when it comes to my inner child isn't reconnecting or finding that inner child. It's not being ashamed to show it to the extent that it is very present for me. Yes. Now, for example, I don't really like watching TV shows geared towards adults. I love children's shows and children's movies. It's really hard for me to sit through adult TV shows and adult movies. Ooh, I mean like movies geared towards adults. Anyway, it's not easy for me to do that. It's like, I almost can't. But you stick on any cartoon, I'm there. And I really even thought it was a thing for me of like, oh, it's just because I really like watching the same TV shows over and over again because of a comfort thing, which is true. I do have that with certain cartoons, but otherwise it's not true, because I do have adult TV shows that I've watched and I'm not interested in watching ever again. I enjoyed them. I'm not going to watch them ever again. But the thought of starting a new adult TV show makes me anxious. However, you ask me, oh, watch this new cartoon? I'm there. I'm doing it already. It's already on the TV 7 seconds ago before you even said that. Yes, so it has been the realization that it's not inner child connection for me. It is, allowing that intense amount of inner child I have to be seen and authentic with a wider array of my world. Am I making sense there? I don't know. I'd be curious to know if anybody else feels the same, because I really was so convinced that inner child work just didn't work for me. And that's because it was this thing of like, well, I don't need to do those activities in order to like feel a connection with childlikeness, it's because I go through my whole day connecting with, you know, what is seen as childlike. That's just what I like. It's what I like to do. But I do get embarrassed about it. And that's the thing that I need to sort of spend time with, is that embarrassment. Because it does bring about feelings of embarrassment when my friends are all talking about this great new TV show or great new movie or a great new book that they read, and I never know what they're talking about, or they say you should watch it, and I can't do it. And then when I'm asked, like, oh my gosh, what TV show have you been enjoying lately? And my answer's My Little Pony, Friendship and Magic. There is a hesitancy and a part of me that doesn't want to say it, doesn't want to admit that that's what I've been watching and loving so much, so much. So, that being said, I wanted to share some ways that I now realize I've kind of already been using that sense of my inner child in order to do healing work. I think maybe that'll make it make sense. So to start, and we're talking about decks here. So we're getting into decks. To start, my Adventure Time Tarot. I know, how many times can this lady talk about this? I don't know, endlessly. And what I do with this deck a lot of the times is when I'm watching Adventure Time, which is one of my favorite shows, I bring the deck with me and I flip through it, or I do a reading, and while I am doing something that for me is so part of my day-to-day, like watching, it's not just Adventure Time, but that's kind of the one where it's like, ooh, I could watch it over and over, and I have. So I watch this one a lot. So while I am doing something that to me feels so normal, I'm pulling cards and doing readings with these characters I really connect with on such a different level than I do other things, because it's a TV show made for children in reality, and these characters I feel like are just a lot of the times mentally in a similar plane as I am. And again, it's not to say that I am childish. I do the adult things I need to do, and not to say that I am immature by any stretch of the imagination. But I just find I can really easily connect to the archetypes built into these characters and how they go through their character development. It's just something that really makes sense to me. And so I realized, like, that is how I am allowing myself to broadcast this very apparent inner child more, is through using this tarot deck while I watch the show, which I do quite often, and then talking about this deck on here and just showcasing that a little bit more. So that is my Adventure Time Tarot. This is going to be basically a showcase of children's TV shows I like that help me sort of work through certain inner child healing things, because I don't mean to say that or suggest that I don't have healing to do around the inner child. I'm meaning that this is how I go about that work, and allowing myself to watch children's TV shows and movies so much more freely, not pressuring myself to engage with, you know, media geared towards adults just so that I can fit in or join in certain conversations, has been really healing to my inner child. And I guess the interesting thing is that, like, the messages and lessons being learned in these shows are things that little me really needed, and maybe just didn't grasp at the time, but it's also like lessons that really extend into adulthood as well, and it's just really interesting to me, and something that I've just been really enjoying. So this is just gonna be me showing my decks that connect to the children's shows I like. So next we've got the Future Vision Gem Tarot. This is my Steven Universe deck. I have been loving it so much, and I think part of it is for sure, I know the reason I love the show, and thus the reason I love the deck, is I really, really connect with the main character, Steven Universe, because he does have this innate childlikeness to him, where it leans even to a bit of a naivete, but only because he is so well-intentioned, and so it's, you know, he's going through the world with that lens and learning all these lessons, and that just really reminds me of myself now, and certainly myself when I was younger, as I just always assumed the best, and I don't know, just always wanted to bring joy to every situation, and, you know, that doesn't always work out, as we see with Steven's interactions with different characters and how sometimes he does have to just deal with disappointment, things of that sort. So another great one. I love that one. Alright, let's go to the other show I have been watching lately is Dragon Tales. This is a show I loved as a child. I watched it all the time, but I feel like I just hadn't remembered. I do like faintly remember the episodes as I'm watching them, but the messages that come across were just so good. And there's no Dragon Tales deck yet, unless someone wants to create it. That would be so great. Thank you so much. Anyway, so what I'm using in the meantime is the Field Guide to Garden Dragons. And so these are just cute dragons. It reminds me of Dragon Tales. And what I love about sort of combining how I feel about that show with how I feel about this deck is that basically you have these dragons who are here to teach you a message. And that's sort of how I've started seeing how inner child functions for me, and working with cards and inner child work is that I'm not pulling out decks that just because they seem childlike. I am really trying to combine my interests that lean towards the child, which is most of them, and my cards to sort of let there be this overarching message where it's like it's fusing in some way. I feel like I'm saying so many words that just are probably making no sense. But in Dragon Tales, every episode teaches children this really major theme around sort of the self and interactions with others, and it's really fantastic. And so when I use this deck to do inner child work, I'm seeing these dragons, like the dragons in Dragon Tales, that they're here to teach me some sort of lesson in that same kind of way, where it's lighthearted, and I don't know, I hear the little song while I'm doing it. Love the song for that show. Amazing. So that is the Field Guide to Garden Dragons that, to me, pairs with Dragon Tales. One more, since I mentioned it, we're gonna get into My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, which I did indeed buy the action figures for, and this is bringing me endless joy. This has been my total obsession, and what started it is on Kickstarter right now. There is a My Little Pony Friendship is Magic tarot deck. I mean, how cute are these? And I had never watched My Little Pony. See, and this is my point where it's like, it doesn't faze me to watch a new children's show. I had never watched it, and so instantly I was like, yeah, I gotta watch it. I gotta watch it. And so I have been, and I've been so obsessed. And I think what I love about it so much too is that it's another show where, so you learn, it's called Friendship is Magic, and basically in it, Twilight Sparkle is kind of like the main character, and she is the Cute. She is the princess of Equestria, her apprentice, and so she sends a letter to the princess at the end of every episode talking about what she learned about friendship, because she starts the show where she doesn't really have friends, and then this has been within the first episode, so it's not that much of a spoiler, and also it's called Friendship is Magic, so you can assume she makes friends. And so the princess's challenge for her is really like learning the magic of friendship, and so she writes a letter to her at the end of every episode, what she learned in the situation, whatever it was, about friendship. And so, as someone who grew up with social anxiety majorly, my assumption is because of the undiagnosed neurodivergence, I really just have connected with this show so much, and I love that each of the ponies is very solidly a certain archetype. It's really fascinating to me in that way as well. And so I've just gotten so much out of this show, and just having these little ponies, and the deck, until that tarot deck comes out, the one that has been the pairing deck is the Witchling Academy Tarot. I think it's because in this, even though it's not ponies, we've got this group of female presenting characters who are all in this one place. All of them are learning from each other, interacting with each other, they're all friends, and so I think there's just like a similar undertone there. And also, I mean, it's just cute and pink, and I don't know, just similar vibe. And so I've really been loving using this deck when it comes to working with the thoughts around this show sort of while I'm watching it. And that is sort of the inner child healing I've been doing. Am I talking in circles? Maybe I should succinctly explain is how I've been doing my inner child work lately is, one, allowing myself to way more freely engage with media geared towards children, trying to not feel embarrassed towards that, trying to share more about it, which is part of my goal in making this video. Watching those shows, paying attention to what I feel like I'm learning from those episodes, and like I'm telling you, even if you're someone who doesn't really usually like childlike things, give it a try because you learn some good lessons, I'm telling you. So engaging with the lessons from these children's shows and doing readings with the decks I have personally associated with these shows or have been made to associate with the shows, and sort of connecting myself and my own healing I need to do around whatever kind of struck a chord from that episode. I have to think if I have a good example. Yes, I do. Why not? So in Steven Universe, there is an episode that I absolutely love called Together Breakfast. And in the episode, Steven gets so excited to make what he has deemed Together Breakfast, where he is truly making breakfast for everyone in his family, his gem family, to just eat it together. That's truly all it is. But the excitement he has towards it is something I instantly related to it. But then throughout the episode, basically everyone is busy and just keeps leaving behind, so the breakfast just like sits and sits and sits until Steven just gets so sad and frustrated that no one is like pausing to pay attention to that. And watching that episode, it's like I actually got emotional because I was like, little me really connects to that feeling. And it's something, like any other sort of inner child work we notice, it has carried into adulthood. And so watching that episode, I pulled out this deck and I did a reading based on that feeling that it brought up. So I hope this was helpful and that it made sense. Thank you for coming to my talk today that probably was very circular and nonsensical. But I would love to know everyone else's thoughts. How do you like to do inner child work? Have you realized you need to do it a different way? Am I even doing it a different way? I don't know. I don't know. It felt different, so I wanted to share. Other than that, I hope you're all having a fantastic week so far, and I will see you again very soon.